Good evening. The inquiry into state capture today started dealing with the Estina farm project once again. Back before the inquiry, the former head of Department for Agriculture in the Free State, Peter Thabethe, he's been implicated by several witnesses in corruption with the Estina dairy farm project. Thabethe says he remembers spending 30 million rand through the project in 2012 and that other transactions occurred in a different financial period. Our reporter Manqoba Mchunu joins us now. Manqoba, good evening to you. Okay, a lot of this is around financial mismanagement. At some point, someone raised a series of red flags.
Well, of course, Stephen, there were red flags that were raised in this project from its onset because there were just too many issues that came up. I mean, for example, the first contract that was signed by Peter Thabethe on the 5th of June had 3 partners in it, and that partner being the department itself, as well as Paras, which is an Indian company that is dealing with dairy production. So that is really the expertise behind the project, as well as the third partner being Estina. But with that, of course, that contract, there were several issues raised about the legality of that project by the state legal advisors, as well as the Free State Treasury, who had said that, you know, that that contract as it was at the time was simply illegal and that it will be violating the Public Finance Management Act. And of course, another contract was then drawn up by the legal advisors. And of course, in that second contract on the 5th of July, which was signed on the 5th of July, the Estina or Paras, the company from India, which had the expertise, was now no longer part of that contract. So the contract was now between Estina and the government on its own. And of course, the red flag there was the fact that there was a promise of a 220 million rand investment into the project by Paras, which was meant to be part of this. And not having Paras as part of this deal now meant that where would that money have come from? But of course, another issue that came up, Stephen, was the issue of due diligence, which was raised by the Chief Justice and the evidence leader, Advocate Leah Kabash, as to whether due diligence was followed up with regards to this contract. And of course, he does agree that this was not done. What due diligence is basically a comprehensive analysis of the business and whether the business will be able to carry out the job that it set out to do. So in this case, Estina was run by somebody who was an IT specialist who had no expertise in dairy production or agriculture. And while the project manager at the farm at that time was somebody from India who also didn't have any experience, which is why we had cows dying at the farm. But of course, the frustration that the chair had was the fact that Paras and Estina were meant to contribute 220 million into the project. And of course, on the day before they signed the contract, on the day before the 30 million, the first payment was made of 30 million, Paras had 16.98 rand in his bank account. And of course, the question is...
So hold on, when they signed, they had under 17 rand in their bank account?
They only had 16.98 in their bank account. And of course, the question is, how then would they pay the 220 million? Which really frustrated the Chief Justice. Let's take a listen to this clip.
Can you see the risk that you put the department in by not doing the risk assessment, the homework that we talked about? You are, in terms of this agreement, expecting Estina to pay more than 200 million rand into the project. But you don't even know if they've got a cent in their account. And what is being said is, look at the bank statements as at that time. One was how much, Mr. Kabash?
The day before the 30 million went in, Chairman, there was 16 rand in the account.
How can you expect that entity to give you 228 million rand? Where will they get it from? You are the head of the department. You have certain responsibilities. You are the accounting officer. You must look after the taxpayers' money. You must look after the budget of the department.
Deputy Judge President Raymond Zondo there speaking today. Manqoba, this person with IT skills, were they from Sahara Computers, the company that was linked to the Guptas?
Yes, of course. That was Kamal Valshram, who used to work for the Gupta company Sahara. And of course, as you've heard, there was no expertise, which is why you recall the evidence of the previous businessman from Fieda who said that, when he arrived at the farm, cows were dying, and the person there, the project manager as well, simply had no expertise. He didn't even know what to feed those cattle, and as a result, many of them ended up dying.
So the question over all of this, of course, is whether this amounts to financial mismanagement.
Of course, that's another issue that was raised by the evidence leader, Kabashe, with regards to financial misconduct, saying that, how could you, as the HOD, the accounting officer of the department, actually commit the department to paying over 114 million into the project for 3 years, whereas you knew that the department simply didn't budget for this. Of course, you recall, Stephen, that initially the Fieda Dairy Farm project was initially set to receive 6 million rand, but in the end they got 30 million rand as a start-off. But on top of that, they then requested a further 84 million rand from the department. Of course, the advocate asking, how could you make such a commitment? Surely that does in some way mean that you might have violated the Public Finance Management Act. Let's take, of course, he says that, there were issues. He raised it with the lawyers. And of course, the lawyers had made several suggestions to him. But the evidence leader is saying you keep on evading questions and it's not good enough. Let's take a listen to that.
Mr. Thabethe, with all due respect, you can't pass the buck all the time when you are the head of department. You have to take responsibility for some things. You have to interrogate certain things. You can't say my lawyer advised. Lawyers advise. You take the final decision. That's how it operates in the private sphere and in the public sphere as in government. So you had decisions to take, much as you might be getting advice from lawyers. So I find it difficult to accept an answer that says our lawyers took care of all of this.
Sure, that's what happens today. Manqoba, quite a hot seat. When's he coming back?
Well, of course, he's going to come back next month. He was expected to finish his testimony today, but of course that didn't happen. So he's expected to come back next month to face more grueling questions.
Manqoba Mchunu, thanks very much indeed for coming in. Really do appreciate it.